Hey everybody, Coach here. Hey, it's been a few minutes and we are all done with obviously the holidays, and we have now taken our time in January to get through the worst of winter. And it's been a long and very cold one. But this particular podcast is about you guys that are down south maybe right now or anywhere else in the country during the growing season. We're talking about landscape frustrations, the top 5 that I have seen as a professional and as a homeowner, and we're going to dive into them in a 2-part series here. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Stay till the end, I hope, and let's get rolling. Hey guys, just a brief break in this week's podcast here, and an invitation for you to go over to youryardcoach.com and check out the products and services that we offer there. For most people, DIY landscaping on a medium to larger level can be very, very intimidating. And the book and the course and some of the checklists that we do offer really streamline the process and bolster a DIYer's confidence. So I invite you to go over there, check it out. And if you have any questions, you can always email me at youryardcoach@gmail.com. Now, let's get back to the podcast. Welcome back. Thanks for coming and checking us out. Hey, many homeowners, I would say a majority of you, and when I say that, I'm talking about 55%, have a good working knowledge of what your landscape needs and wants, and have learned by actual practical application what makes it perform best throughout the year. But there's the other 48%, are just some folks who just plain struggle with anything attached to landscaping, no matter what the circumstances is, and tend to ignore needs, and maybe they hire somebody to fix it, or like I have seen a lot of places around where I live, they just freaking give up. They come up with their rationale of, I can't do it, so I'm not going to do it, therefore my house is going to look the way it is. But in all honesty, we can't condemn those folks who really don't know what they don't know. But I have an easy solution for the lack of knowledge and know-how that'll really get you over the hump. And it's a 1-word answer: learn, with an exclamation point, all capitals. No excuse in this day and age. If you can sit there on your phone or your device or whatever you have, and you can scroll through all your entertainment stuff, then you still have the time to go through and learn what your particular landscape situation suffers from, how to correct it, and how easy it probably is to correct it. All that info is out there with just a few clicks. It is easy to alleviate ignorance and gain knowledge in a matter of a few minutes. Now, I'm not talking to the people who just plain flat don't give a crap. They may be homeowners, but their yard looks like crap, their house looks like crap, both inside and outside, and you do you and I'll do me. But moving forward, let's talk about one of the biggest frustrations that people go through, and is the biggest thing of the Jonesian syndrome that I have ever seen and have come across. And that is the old lawn or turf frustration. When I'm talking about the lawn and turf frustration, I'm talking about people don't know what the mow height should be, how much water it should get, when and how to fertilize, how to take care of invasive weeds. What about doggo or doggos and how they kill and spot up the lawn? And more importantly, what the heck type of lawn do I have? Let's take these in no particular order. If you have a frustration that I didn't cover, man, email me. Email me and let me address it for you, and we can see if we can fix it together, just with a few back and forths. So let's start off with, what type of lawn do I have? The study of turf grasses and that kind of stuff is called agronomy. I took a semester or 2 in it in college, and I did learn quite a bit of it there and the nurseries that I worked at when I was a young man and into my early 20s. And most of the time, as an agronomist, they can look at grasses and just identify it without seeing it in someone's yard or driving by it, or they can just look at a piece of the grass and go, ah, this is bluegrass, this is a fescue, this is a centipede grass, this is zoysia, this is bahia grass, this is Bermuda grass. And it's great, but I'm not an agronomist. Possibly you're not an agronomist, but many ornamental grasses surround a handful of varieties and can be ID'd relatively easy by either nowadays just taking a picture of it and submitting it to a plant ID app, or take a plug of it and take it down to your local nurseryman, a certified nurseryman in your state. Now, if you don't have one, maybe you have a college agricultural extension or something like that that you can tap into and get your lawn identified. Now, if your lawn is like mine, I am an equal opportunity employer of various grasses. I am. The person who, or persons who put this lawn in out here, let's just say they probably used what was on sale and they didn't do a really good job as far as seed bed preparation. And I'm up a little too far in the north to be having sod unless I want to start paying $5 a square foot. And I've got now, after a little bit of reduction, I probably have about 12,000, maybe 12,500 square feet. You do that math. No, I'm not paying that kind of money for a turf grass. But you can kind of break down turf grasses here in the States and in many parts of the world around the globe. You can break them down into cool season grasses and warm season grasses. And the cool season grasses are just what they mean. It doesn't mean they necessarily grow in the depth of winter, but they do like cooler temperatures. They like temperatures definitely, I would say, 80 and below. They look their best. You get above 80, some grasses like bluegrass, it'll actually go into a semi-state of dormancy, like in the heat of the summer, and then it'll bounce back to life as soon as early fall hits, and it'll come back and start growing again. Same with fescues and ryegrasses. I know when I was out in Central Valley of NorCal, most of the grasses that I had were what they called a dwarf fescue with about a 15% bluegrass mix. And they would look fan-freaking-tastic from about late February till about the beginning of July. And then from the beginning of July till about the 1st of September, they kind of slowed way down and not a lot happened. And it wasn't that I was doing anything wrong. It's just a cool season grass. It's not going to grow really fast that time of year. And then boom, as soon as the September, October, November rolls around, it took off again. And I always made sure that it had a little bit of food right around September 1st, and it would push it all the way to Thanksgiving without any problem. And it would look like a spring lawn all over again. Now for your warm season grasses, just flip the table there. It does best when things are warm and humid outside. They do very, very well. In the colder parts of the year, when I say colder, I'm talking about 50 and below, they go into kind of a state of dormancy and they'll just kind of sit there. There are some like Bermuda grass, hybrid Bermuda grass, that will literally go totally dormant, turn brown, and you won't see it again until it warms back up again the following spring. So cool season grasses, bluegrass, fescues, ryegrasses, some of the annual bluegrass, weedy type of grass. And then your warm season grasses, things like zoysia, centipede, bahia, and Bermudas. Now, as far as watering these types of grasses, it will depend on identifying what grass you have. That's the easy rule of thumb. But if you want a real big, broad brush approach, and I'm talking, 4-inch wide generalities here, we're talking about an inch a week of water for optimum turf management and turf growth. Good, healthy, moist root zones that have a root zone that is 4 to 6 inches deep. instead of like an inch deep where you're constantly having to water it and you don't know why. An inch of water a week will penetrate through that thatch layer down into the root zone and then saturate the root zone for a period of time, giving the turf plenty of water, and then it will perk out and go about its merry way. But that's under perfect conditions. That's under perfect lawn prep, perfect lawn aeration every couple years, perfect lawn food and fertilizer balance, perfect exposure to sunlight. That's the generality of it. So how do you get that? Well, you can water 3 times a week, put a third of an inch of water out there, and how in the heck do you know what a third? You can put measuring devices and other things if you have an irrigation system, or if you're getting rain twice a week, maybe you get a half inch of rain overnight on Thursday, and you get another half inch of rain on Monday morning, and there's your inch of rain. Where I'm at, I generally rely on Mother Nature's watering system until about August. And up here in the far north, right about the second week of August, we go into the dry season. And that will continue for about 6 weeks. And when we do that, my lawn out here with the soil that I have and the type of grasses that are out there, if I don't throw a little supplemental water on there, yeah, they'll not only go dormant, but they'll actually, it'll start turning brown. It can bounce back after a first rain in the fall, but it really stresses out the turf grasses, and it allows the weeds to kind of come in and take over a little bit. So kind of think along that 1 inch, amount of water every week, and you should be good. Now, some of the things that adversely affect that 1 inch of water per week, let's take a look at them really quick. And that is super heavy soils that do not absorb water readily. It tends to take a long time. Like if you have a heavy red clay soils, a heavy gray soils, that tends to not perk down into the root zone very much. Also super sandy soils. If you live down in the desert Southwest, or you have really, I know some places up in Michigan have really sandy soils, and unless you amend that turf bed when you install your lawn, that soil is not going to hold on to water very much. And then you couple that with some other environmental issues like a windstorm or a heat wave. And so you have to be kind of on your game during the growing season to pay attention to these things. And if you do, you will find that your turf grasses will repay you in spades with nice new flush growth and the ability to look really good and have that Jonesian lawn in the neighborhood. But just pay attention. It doesn't take any time. It really doesn't take any time. Less than 30 seconds. Less than 30 seconds, you can tell whether your lawn's going to need water, or that you've scheduled your sprinkler system to come on 3 times a week, or 2 times a week, or 1 time a week, whatever it takes to supplement your turf up to that 1 inch mark. So doing a simple, like you wanted to identify your turf grass type, same thing with your soil. Go out there with like a bulb planter or a soil auger or something, or even just a shovel, and dig down, dig a little 12-inch plug out of there and pull it up and look at the soil that you have. It doesn't take an Einstein to say, hey, I have a real sandy soil here, or I have a very rocky clay soil, or I have something in between. And then you can kind of say, man, when I bought this house last year, I'll bet you the previous owner never took care of the lawn, never aerated it, never recomposted it, never renovated it with a power renovator, never reseeded it, and that's why I have the lawn that I have. So you can kind of form a game plan of what you might need to do this year to really rejuvenate that turf grass out there so that you have a lawn that you can kind of be proud of and you can actually use, and a very healthy turf is going to stand up to so many other problems. Now let's talk about infestations in lawns. If you've never had it, it's not an if but a when, but sometimes we have turf no matter what we do because of surrounding lawns in the neighborhood. Yes, in this case, you could probably blame the local neighbors. And that is that you'll get sod web worm, lawn grub, sod moth that comes in, especially in the summertime, especially in the evening. You'll see them mothing around out there, flying just above the lawn surface. They're laying their eggs in the turf itself. That germinates, and you get a little grub that burrows itself down into the root zone. And they don't eat the green, they eat the root. And they stay down out of sight and certainly out of mind to a naive homeowner, but they also avoid predators and other things while they're down inside the ground. It doesn't mean that birds don't know about them. It doesn't mean that skunks don't know about them. But if you have this problem, you should be aware that no matter how much water you're throwing on the lawn, there are parts and patches out there that just always look wilted. And that's a key indicator. That's a red flag that there's something wrong with that. Now, is it fungus? Is it grubs? Is it some other form of mildew or algae or something like that? Most of the time, it's going to be an insect infestation. And those are easily controlled. Whether you like chemicals or not, it can be easily controlled. But what can fend off those type of infestations? Like I just said, it is a healthy turf to begin with. So there's things like triazide, other chemical products. You can actually have a weed and feed and also a fungicide and insecticide products that are out there all in one bag that you can put on your lawn, probably more prophylactically rather than reactively, that will take care of things like that. Now, what about pet damage? Everybody loves their doggo. They really do. I have had landscape customers spend tens upon tens of thousands of dollars on brand new landscapes and demanded there had to be at least a little 10 by 10 piece of turf for Fifi to go out and go to the bathroom. I would say, why don't you use artificial turf or something else? Because Fifi or Grog or whatever your dog's name is and size, all they're gonna do is kill that little patch. And if that's what they need to do their business, then maybe doggo needs to get retrained, or owner, you need to get retrained, and you put out something that's more artificial. And the artificial turf patches for just doggo, they don't cost that much, and it's a weekend's worth of work. But oh my God, the times that I remember installing sod only for people to have their dog go out and literally ruin it inside 2 months after installation, and then come back to me and say, hey, that lawn you installed, it's dying. And I would say, you mean the one that you wanted for your dog to pee and poop on? Come on now. You know, there's not much you can do about the heavy ammonia and salt concentrations in dog's urine. There's just nothing. You got to expect that if they're going to pee on the lawn, especially a girl dog, that's what's going to happen. To me, it seems like a total waste of time. Go lawnless. Teach the dog from the beginning where to go. And don't just allow them to damage the investment that you have, front yard or backyard, God forbid, neighbor's yard. How many of us have seen dog walker Joe and Jane with doggo on the leash, and they just let the dog go up into someone else's yard and pee and poop? I'll never understand. No longer do I have pets. Nope, not for me anymore. But in many cases, you can put treatments on the lawn that will neutralize or at least mitigate to a certain point the strong salts and ammonia of pet urine. No guarantees. If you go out there right as they're peeing and water it and dilute it. You may stand a little chance, but I think you're just basically washing those ammonias and salts down into the root zone. You're going to have some of the same results. But I think it's a training thing. It's a training thing starting with you and then starting and continuing with Doggo. And just be careful. You know, if all you want is a poop-ridden, pea-ridden lawn, that's your business. But many of us come here to learn how to do it right and to have it look nice, and then don't do it this way. Plain and simple. Okay, weeds. Depending on the ID of weeds, we break those down into two categories, just like we broke down the classes of grasses. There's either broadleaf weed or there's grassy weeds, depending on what you have and where you're at. Most of the time, broadleaf weeds will be growing season only, and grassy weeds, you can have stuff like annual bluegrass, Poa annua, that will in some zones grow during the colder parts of the year and continue to grow through the spring and into early summer. Then it too kind of goes into dormancy, but more importantly to watch out for is when it goes to seed. It goes to seed really rapidly as a young plant, and you'll have half a dozen little grassy blades of annual bluegrass, and you'll have 500 little seed heads on that thing. And as soon as you go and mow and chop off and disperse all that grass seed, that's how you end up with it going through your lawn. And in many cases, say for instance, where I used to work in another ornamental West Coast type of landscapes, native Bermuda grass was also something that really people fought and fought and fought. I fought and fought at Weed Patch Ranch, and although I won the battles, when I left that property, I probably had about 10% Bermuda grass in fescue bluegrass lawn. And I hated it. I tried to pull it. I tried to treat it, and nothing permanently took care of it. You really have to pay attention to it and stay on it. If it was there before you put a lawn in, I don't care if you sprayed Roundup and you killed it as dead. It has a propensity to go to seed somewhere else and blow in, or all you need is a tiny little viable sprig that was not thoroughly killed, and you go in and rototill and prepare your sod bed or your seed bed, and you come in and you put the compost and the fertilizers and the seed and the top dressing on, and it comes up beautifully. And then the Bermuda has a way of kind of getting started underground first. And it'll run 12 inches and then pop a couple sprigs up, and another 12 inches and pop another one up. And then as that rhizome system starts to grow and strengthen, it starts to come up everywhere. And then if you let it go to seed or you mow it when it is at seed, that's where a lot of people lose the battle. And they either say, I'm just going to have a Bermuda lawn, I guess, or they tear it all out and start over again, or go lawnless, and you just have to spot treat it as it comes up into your new lawnless landscape. They call it devil grass for a reason. They really do. Now, another thing is no matter what if it's a new lawn system and you're having spot weeds come up, there's a couple of ways to approach it. You can get out there and hand pull it, which if it's not a big deal, do it. Go out there. I can remember when my kids were young that I would go out on the promise of either frozen yogurt run or hot dogs for lunch run or whatever. We'd go out there and have a weed pulling party. And most of it was annual bluegrass that was coming up. Sometimes it was Bermuda grass. Sometimes it was other stuff. But I had the two older ones with me, and we'd go out and we'd pull for an hour or so. And it's amazing how many weeds, 3 people can pull if they stay focused. The thing is keeping kids focused. But it worked, and we kept it relatively weed-free, not 100%, but relatively weed-free, and they got their rewards. So you do it. You can go out there, if there's weeds coming up in the landscape and stuff, you can do all kinds of spot treatment with chemicals or blow torches or any number of things that are that are out there that you can take care of them. But make it a team event, and hopefully you stay on the winning side. Now, if you're going chemical wise, 2 classes. Again, seeing a trend yet? There's a non-selective herbicide and a selective herbicide. And usually the bottle itself will tell you everything you need to know. Even that fold out instruction that looks like a chemist and an attorney wrote it at the same time. It will tell you the weeds that it will control, the amount of product that you use per gallon of water, and go forth and kill the weeds that you want to kill. If you have broadleaf weed in your lawn area, cool season or warm season, many times you can treat it with a weed and feed product on a regular basis. One-time treatment generally does not get it. Or you can go out there with a broadleaf spray and just treat it and knock them down, and do it every 6 weeks for a while, because you'll always have a second and third generation during the growing season. Now, what about grassy weeds? The biggest one that I know of is crabgrass. That stuff is a bane of my existence for the first 2 years out in my lawn. No one ever did anything. You know, they had a mow and blow guy that came in and mowed it every 2 weeks, which allows crabgrass to germinate, come up, and almost go to seed in 2 weeks, especially like hairy crabgrass. Oh my God. I sat out there a few days and I filled up a wheelbarrow full of crabgrass. And I tried to get it before it goes to seed. Because once again, letting it go to seed and then you come in with the rotary mower, you know, all you're doing is just casting it. You know, I don't care if you have a bag or not. It's not going to stay just in that bag. It's going to go everywhere. So understand that there's many preventions, and the cures are a combination of treatment and pulling. And if you eliminate many of the generation of this year, you'll have 50% less or more next year. You pull those, now you go down to 25% or less, and in a couple of 3 years, you have eliminated, provided that you don't have anything blowing in from the neighbors. Mow and blow guys and gals, I love you. But you're also the biggest disperser of weed seed around the neighborhoods and across the city that I've ever seen. And I can remember putting in many, many hundreds, if not thousands of square feet of pristine, prepared, sod lawns, and then the owners bring in the mow and blows. Guarantee you, they do not rinse their mowers from one yard to another. And they come to the Smith's yard with their brand new sod lawn after they just came from the Joneses, who have absolutely Bermuda broadleaf dog crap lawn. They pull it out of the truck and start mowing your lawn. Yep, there's a professional level that just cannot be attained by rinsing the mower unless you specify every single yard that these guys and gals go to. It just, where are they going to put it? Where are they going to put the mower rinsings? In your yard before they go off to another yard? Or in the Joneses' yard before they come to your yard? That time is money for those guys. At Weed Patch, every single mow I did, I rinsed the bag and I rinsed the decking on the mower. Every single one. And then I would let them dry out for the rest of the afternoon or evening or till the next day. Then I would put the mower away. And I don't think I brought in anything. The infestation of Bermuda that I had was blown in from I know where, but he didn't care either. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about fertilizing. These applications can be a two-edged sword. They're certainly not used in a more is better fashion. Remember that. That usually results in burns and die-off in heavily treated areas. And when you're doing your mixing and other stuff, you do not do it on the lawn itself. You can do it on a small little tarp or towel or something on the driveway or out in the rocks or something, but don't open up the bag and pour it and fill the spreader or the whirlybird or whatever you're using on the lawn itself. Because that initial trigger pull when you're putting stuff down oftentimes has a little more than what is suggested for your lawn application. And you know about the numbers and the select guides on your drop spreaders or on your whirlybirds, and those generally correspond to the type of instructions you have on your fertilizer bag. You either put it on a 4 or a 6.5 or a whatever, and you put it on at a rate where you're already rolling before you get on the lawn. You may have a little bit that drops on the driveway. Hey, come back with a push broom and clean it up. And as long as your driveway was clean, put the fertilizer back in the bag. It's not going to hurt anything. So remember that you have to put it on at a rate that is suggested. And anything more, you risk damaging the lawn. Now, there's lots of lawn fertilizers out there that are very potent. And the reason they are potent and strong is because people want instant gratification. So they have a huge, that 3-letter analysis on the bags, 10, 10, 10, 2399, whatever it might be. Anything over 15 is a really strong nitrogen fertilizer. And so if you're putting on a strong nitrogen fertilizer, that is the element that has the potential that once it contacts the blades of the grass or gets activated by water and going into the thatch and root zone, that it can burn. Phosphorus and the potassium, which are generally very low numbered things, those things tend not to do a lot of burning. So remember, get your selector set correctly, start your rolling and fertilizer application before you hit the green, and then when you come off, come right off, and then release the trigger. Turn around, do it again, back and forth. And remember, I suggest that you do it not on the day of mowing. And why do I say that? Because if you have the mower on the lawn and your mower has put wheel tracks in the lawn to a certain extent, it becomes very hard to monitor where your wheel tracks of the fertilizer was so that you have a perfect coverage and you don't have double coverage. And when you get double coverage and overlap, that oftentimes you end up with over-fertilization strips on the lawn. Or worse yet, you fertilize and then you have a space of 6 inches because you couldn't tell exactly where the wheel was before. So now you have this space where there's really green striped lawns that go down through the lawn. So do it, you could do it the day before you mow, unless you're doing a weed and feed, then you want to leave it on there a day or two so the herbicide part of it can actually do its job. But if you're not doing it, a weed and feed, then fertilize the day before and then water it in really good, clean up your driveway or your walkways or whatever you might have, and then come back through in 48 hours and mow. Then you can really tell where the lawn fertilizer wheels, the little device, and if you're doing a whirlybird, okay, I don't think those things are very accurate as far as disbursement, but some people like them because they're light and they don't require a lot of maintenance or anything else. You be your own good judge. I always suggest that you follow those manufacturer's directions, and bar none, there may be a 5% rule out there somewhere, but 95% of the time you're going to be okay. Just remember, we don't fertilize anything that is dry. We fertilize a moist, wet lawn. We don't scalp the lawn like coming in and mowing. We don't scalp a lawn and then come in and fertilize. You're just asking to kill your lawn and set it back for months and months and months. Now, as far as a treatment plan, it's a good idea to have one. If you're in some of the higher grow zones throughout the world, you could get away with probably 4 times a year. And when I was out west, I would have a end of February, a end of May, a end of September, and an end of November. Those were my 4 times a year. And it always kept plenty of food element in the root zone and keeping the lawn healthy and growing and thriving and green and all the stuff that we want from our lawns. Now that I'm up in the far north, I can't fertilize 4 times a year. There's no way in heck. I have 6 months of winter here that goes from right around November 1st till the end of April. So I generally do a May 1st and a August 1st. And that is it. That's all it gets out here. That's all I can do. So you be your own good judge. 2 times a year minimum, if you have an actively growing lawn, good turf system, 2 times a year, and then 4 times a year is what I did. That's just what I'm not telling you have to do that. It's just what I did. And if I didn't mention it, I don't know if I just mentioned it or not, but always water really good the day before, and then you fertilize the next day. And then maybe you mow the day after that. So one thing I do not suggest to anybody, and that is hand broadcasting fertilizer. That is just a recipe for a weird looking lawn in about 30 days, where you can literally see the arcing tosses of the fertilizer that you used and the areas that you missed, because it's very hard to get a nice even coverage while you're having a handful of fertilizer being tossed out by hand. Okay, moving on, mow height. Mow height is depending on what your horticultural prowess is really easy or really hard, depending on how you approach things. I'm going to give you another broad brush approach, and that is cool season grasses during the growing season, 2 to 4 inches high as a generality. Warm season grasses, depending on the variety, 2.5 inches high, plus or minus, depending on the weather. During the heats of the summer, your lawn will greatly appreciate having more green height, protecting that root zone down there from evaporation and sun scald. Do not, during a heat wave, don't allow your lawn to grow up 4 or 5 inches tall, and then you go, oh my God, I let that thing get out of control. I'm going to come in and set my mower down to almost nothing, and I'm just going to butcher that lawn. You are going to end up with 50% death almost guaranteed. It's going to be just scalded, and it'll take the rest of the season and probably into next to recover. And then all the weeds and everything else that your healthy lawn was preventing, yeah, it's going to be like a 3-ring circus. It really will be. So again, just like fertilizing, I always suggest that you water the day before and then you follow the next day with your mow. Try doing it in the morning hours or the early evening hours, and then don't take more than 1/3 of the height of green that you have of the turf itself, no more than 1/3. A rule of thumb that I used to do is I would let my fescue bluegrass out there at Weed Patch Ranch, I would let it get up to about 4 inches tall, and then I would take it down to about 2.5 inches each week. I would mow once a week. In the springtime, like in end of March into April out there, I had to mow twice a week because it came out of dormancy, out of the winter, and it just went bat crazy. It really did. And so I would be out there, and instead of taking 1.5 inches, I would take off maybe 1 inch. I'd take 1 inch off Tuesday morning, and I'd hit it again maybe Friday afternoon or evening. I had to do that to keep it. Otherwise, it would be 5 inches tall in a week. And then I'd be having to overtax the mower and the blade and emptying bags after. I can remember having 8 wheelbarrows full of grass clippings in one cut during the height of spring. That's a lot of grass. That's a lot of grass. It really is. 8 wheelbarrows. Okay, so what'd you think? This is a multi-part series. I hope maybe I raised a few levels of awareness on this particular frustration of turf grasses and how to keep it right, how to make it right, how to correct it so that it is right. But if there's something that I didn't hit on this lawn frustration, man, you can email me, youryardcoach@gmail.com, and tell me the situation you have, and let's work it out. Next week, we're going to go off into 2, because this was the big one. We're going to go into 2 frustrations and see how we can manage to get through that one. But I sure do appreciate your time. Hey, don't forget the website, youryardcoach.com. Plenty of services and products out there for you. And as always, to your landscape success, I'll catch you next week. Bye for now.